I would say is that, one of the things that I would say is that the thing that I want us to do is actually have a discussion. And there are a few things that I will throw out for us to sort of want to get a sense how you think, what is on your mind, and sort of with this whole ethics and leadership, because it's quite a broad area. For me, Juliet said to kind of fill in the gap. One of the things right now that is so challenging for me is actually raising my last born. So my last born is called Jeremy. And one of the key things that I've learned in life, and you probably have learned in life, is that if you have a child at home, they actually watch what you do and they follow you and they repeat what you do. And that is how they grow up. That is the best learning that they get. A few years ago, my wife sort of pointed out to me, my son comes and says, Daddy, I want to talk to you about three things. And then he says, can you sit down? And I sit down. And this was like when he was 10 years old. And he goes number one, and he talks about it. He goes to number two, and he goes to number three, and then he goes, is that clear? And then my wife just looks at me, and my wife calls me on the side and says, now you see, every time you're on a call and you're talking to people, you're on board meetings and in your office, and you don't close the door, this is exactly what the kid hears, and he's doing that to you. And so the reason why it's very challenging raising him up right now is that he's basically way ahead of his sort of the way he talks to you. He will really, I mean, he's 15 now, and he's now working as a camp director, a camp sort of support person at Babson College. So I told somebody if I had three of these at home, I think I'll just move out because it's so challenging. But that's all about, really making sure that you sort of are able to sort of kind of manage the ship, right? And that's what I want to talk about. But this whole ethics and I really want to talk at it from the point of view of ourselves, right? That a lot of it has to do with what I have on the screen. Overcoming yourself, overcoming ourselves, right? Doris asked the question, which one would you choose? Would you choose ethics or profit, right? Well, as a corporate executive, right, you're tempted to always say, I will choose ethics because what? Because it sounds good. Because it's like the thing that people will kind of applaud you for. It sounds like the good thing. It sounds like the godly, the moral thing to do. But in effect, to drive ethics. When you are a leader, you're not being hired to drive ethics. You're being hired to deliver profitability outcomes. That is what you're being hired. So where does the ethics fit in? Well, number one, having a clear awareness, right? And I have this blank page. And the reason why I'm starting this slide with this blank page is that is how every day really looks like for each of us. When you walk out the door and you get on the job, the thing that we all have is that you go in with a lot of stuff on your mind, and you go in and people come and they start talking to you. Everybody comes and whatnot. And then you leave work and on back home, guess what? You have thoughts on your mind from work and you go home. And those transition points are basically how you run your life. Nobody is going to tell you how a day is going to go, right? There's a lot that I learned, two specific areas. I think Juliet said, I sort of retired from Royal Bank of Scotland. I'll tell you what, Microsoft and Royal Bank of Scotland taught me a lot about ethics. because I was in the middle of when Microsoft got sued by the European Commission. And then I was in the middle of when Royal Bank was investigated for all the financial fraud and whatnot by the EU. Two people that worked for me actually went to jail, right? So these things are not planned and put in your life, right? The same way you walk out of the door all the way to work, the people you work with, none of it is planned. So the question really comes when you have the objective to get from one place to another, how really do you manage the boundaries where actually the decision points are and sort of the issues with ethics come in? Because what is happening is this. As a leader, I don't know what blueprint anybody gives you, right? Because everybody around you has something that they're working on, and you have also been charged with something that you're working on. But I will let me sort of do this. So if I draw these 3 boxes, right? And I'm sharing with you how I look at every day. If I walk into the boardroom, if I walk into, any meeting, any issue. This morning, I had a call from one of the CEOs of one of the financial banks in Ghana that's having an issue. And it's a very, very incredibly complicated issue, right? So the question is, it gets falling in your lap. How do you really decide on this, right? Here's the thing. The first thing is, it's not about us, but unfortunately, ourselves always get in the way, because guess what? We are always trying to create a narrative such that if the story, decision, whatever we do ends up in the front page of the graphic, the New York Times or some newspaper, we want to look good. And unfortunately, that becomes the thing that makes it difficult to get over ourselves, right? So what are these 3 boxes that I've drawn? These 3 boxes that I've drawn. So let me just put here as input, right? And let me just put here as output. So the input is basically stuff that comes in every day, right? So whatever is coming in, right? You start work, you go in every day, someone comes and the first thing is there's a complaint, right? Okay. Somebody has stolen something on the job, there's a project. All kinds of stuff come in, issues and whatnot. So the next thing is, you as a leader, here's the thing, this is what gets thrown at you. Somehow, these are not just things, right? These are people. These are all coming with people and issues and whatnot. They all come in. Those are the input. Now, what should we expect for an output? What should we expect for an output? If every day you go to work and there are all these issues coming in, what exactly should we expect for an output? And I'm calling on Doris to tell me what we should expect for an output. I will give you an example. Doris, 2 people come and walk into the office. All of a sudden, they come in and they say, okay, you know what? There's a complaint that we have. There's an employee out there who's not doing his job. They've never shown up. Every time they do their job, they do a crappy job and whatnot. And we think they are stealing. And that gets put in your lap as a person. Basically, you have a responsibility. What is the output that you're expecting? How do you think through that? What is it that you are expecting to get out of whatever gets thrown like that into your lap?
So my first inkling is an understanding of the situation, work around the situation while keeping a focus on the organizational goal so that at the end of the day, what needs to be addressed, if people need to be fired, if some policies need to be reviewed, if some security cameras need to be installed, etc., that they are done and the organization still achieves its goal.
Okay, so you're saying that you would listen, understand, and then you seem to have a lot of stuff floating in your mind, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I heard this, I heard a lot of you spoke a lot of grammar, right? Meaning that there are a lot of words that sound cooperative that you put out, right? And that's a challenge because that's the challenge that we have. The question is, you are trying to actually think through this, and you yourself is getting on the way because you have some preconceived stuff that you're thinking, okay, I'll listen and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this. But you have no idea the output that you want, right?
That's true.
So in the middle, let me just put you here, right? So here's you. The thing that we have to think about is that whatever the outputs that we need to have, what usually is the challenge as a leader that we need to achieve is this. What exactly are the frameworks with which we operate as a leader? What are the frameworks with which we operate as a leader? What's the framework with which you operate as a leader? And what are the consequences of it? Right? Because the framework with which we operate as a leader would determine what is coming in. Right? A leader that's not organized, guess what? There's a whole bunch of disorganized stuff that will come to you. There's a whole bunch of, I mean, if a leader who basically has no framework of ethics, guess what? There's a whole bunch of unethical things that people will come and put in your lap, right? So the whole idea is that we need to sort of get a sense of this whole set of frameworks that really makes execution at the heart of ethics a very powerful thing for a leader, right? So I want us to basically take a look at a few things that I believe need to be here in the middle for you as a leader to really have ethics be a driver of how you execute, right? Nobody has hired you. You know, if ethics is what we are hiring people for, we would have actually hired people right after they got baptized, right? Because we know right then they've been baptized, they are totally saved. Let's just put them in the bucket and whatnot. But that's not what it's all about, right? I have been in boardrooms where people needed to be fired, but others sort of made excuses for them, saying, "Oh, they're a good man or they're a good woman and whatnot." You cannot. That is not a framework a framework of thinking, right? So So the first thing I want to side thing that I want to kind of talk about before we get into the middle part is basically this whole idea of communication, only because in Africa it's very important. And I'll actually bring it at the end of the environment, talking about the environment, right? But with that whole middle part that is you, right? Let me redraw it here. Here's others. And here are others, right? So think about it this way. What are the things that we need in the middle to really make sure that we as leaders really, really can make a difference. And the first thing that I want to put down is just this whole idea of ethics is not about morality. Ethics is not about morality, right? But at the core of ethics is really the question that when you're put in a position as a leader, have you done your duty? Are you doing your duty, right? The decisions that you have to make, there is a clear responsibility that you've been given and accountability that has been trusted to you. The question is, at the heart of it is, have you done your duty? And normally that really requires, number one, humility, right? Humility. We are not talking about morality here. You cannot walk into a room and sort of start having an argument because you think it's about you, right? It's about others coming in and it's about others going out. What is coming in and the impact that you have, how you're listening to people and how you're impacting people, right? Number one, humility. Number two, what I'll pull is basically having the will, right? And that is very, very important, because that is where you become a woman of character or a man of character, right? I will give you an example that I basically got confronted with. I had a meeting that I walked through in Ghana, and in the middle of the meeting, it was at the banking college. In the middle of the meeting, an individual stood up and said they feel like singing, right? And they started a church song. So when they started a church song, all of a sudden I saw that like about 3 people basically joined and they started. They all went at it. I straight away, it wasn't my meeting, but I stopped it. I basically said, hold on. And I shut the whole thing down. And the whole room went quiet, as if somehow I'm the devil that has shown up, right? And we had a conversation because what had just happened was there was a serious discussion happening. All of a sudden, one person disrupts it, right? Now, the question is, you as a leader, what do you do? Do you have the will? Do you have the character to back that will that really says, okay, and we'll take a look quickly about this whole concept of respect, right? That a leader has to basically create in the environment. You are trying to create an environment. That environment that you create is the only way to make sure the ethics actually takes root, right? So having that character behind the will. And then number 3, the words I'll probably put down is the word right? Equilibrium. Now, what is equilibrium? Equilibrium basically means being the type of person that establishes stability, right? There are these others that are coming in. There are different, right? There are Black people, there are white people, there are people from Uganda, people from Kenya, there are people from different tribes. There's somebody from the north, somebody from the south. There's somebody who says he's a Christian. There's somebody who says he's a Buddhist. There's someone who says he's agnostic. There are all kinds of people. Those are not the choices you can make as a leader. Those are the talent that has been entrusted in you. That's just talent. You as a leader, that's what you have to take and basically create an impact in people. If I go deeper, here are your people. Here are your customers. What are you going to do, right? So that equilibrium basically is the ability to actually hear opposing stuff, people coming from different angles and whatnot, and really take yourself out of the situation and really manage to make sure that there is a stability always around you. There's a stability. If I may use, let me use actually a religious example. People always wonder why Jesus told Peter to pay the taxes. He took a coin and says, "Hey, listen, now from what you've taught me, I know I don't want to pay taxes because I'm all about God." And so I say, hey, my friend, calm down. You got to do what accountability. So you got to be that leader who knows how to establish equilibrium around you, right? The fourth thing I would put down is this concept that I call transcendence, right? Now, what is transcendence? Transcendence to me has to do with you as a leader having a philosophy of life. What is it that are important to you? If you are given a role as a leader, what is your philosophy of life? Does it include fairness? Does it include equity? Does it include inclusiveness? It is not about you, it's about other people, right? If I love to play golf and I'm a leader and we're having a thing and my people are there, I have to be totally aware my philosophy cannot be about me such that, oh, we're going to play golf. I like playing golf, so everybody's going to do golf. No. What you're going to have major environment where literally ethics will never be able to take hold, right? And that probably is the most difficult thing to achieve, right? Number 5, excellence, right? In a sense, the excellence could actually be part of your philosophy of life, but I'm keeping it out only separately, only because we are in an environment in Africa where politics can actually become a very, very big drag on our leadership, meaning that you actually get a call or somebody come to you and they really do not fit the hole that they are in for whatever reason. Maybe somebody brought them in, maybe you came in and found them and whatnot. The question is, what do you do? Because if there is not an environment that practices excellence, guess what? Ethics will break down. There will be all kinds of cutting corners and basically litigations that would literally destroy your own leadership, right? Number 6, conviction. Conviction basically has to do with you, the things that you have understood, the things that you've litigated, the things that you've come to grips with, and has become part of your core philosophy, not really being ambiguous about it. So conviction for me is lack of ambiguity. People should have clarity in the environment that, if Doris is the manager, I know Doris because this is what Doris believes, and it's very clear who you are. When there's ambiguity around you, guess what? That's where you get somebody in the company, they go and they sell a company car. It's not that they don't have fear of the CEO. What it is that they've seen a lot of ambiguity around the CEO. So they know that probably you can get away with. It is all over the place. But as a leader, you have to basically create an environment that basically says, as long as it's me and I have my people here, these are the things, the frameworks that will be in my mind that I'll guide my leadership with, right? And then number 7, which I'll go in further, is really this whole concept of protection, right? So the protection piece, the way I want to talk about it is this. So let me show you what here. So the protection piece is this. The environment that you're in, the people that are in there are all kinds of stuff going on that literally you have to manage, right? If ethics breaks down, a lot of people are going to be hurt. A lot of people are going to basically be destroyed. Their careers are going to be destroyed, right? So in your company, I would say think about these 4 buckets of people, right? There are people who I call the upstanders, meaning that people who People that you know. And by the way, don't ever be like that as a leader. Self-awareness, right? If you're on a call, you'll be totally self-aware, right? Okay. So upstanders, folks in your organization that you know you can build up and whatnot, they are the folks that literally, when they see ethical gaps, they intervene. That is what I will call your ability to basically create institutional courage among people. Institutional courage is something that's lacking in a lot of African businesses. People do things and people are afraid. Don't say anything. Oh, you know, he's my brother, he's my sister. Oh, we go to church together. Don't say anything. These are the people that you use to build institutional courage around you and in all your organization, right? Then there are the people who basically, they've been harmed, right? They will get harmed, right? So people who are harmed, oftentimes they will choose to respond or they will not choose to respond. And then people who actually cause harm, right? So the people who cause harm also are in your organization. And then you have leaders. The leaders are one of you, right? The leaders are basically the folks that you're going to use to make sure you prevent a lot of stuff that's happening, right? But in the organization, when you think about it, right, you as a leader, the question is what is the way that you are going to actually manage the organization, right? You can say, okay, I will be like a dictator, right? Me, I walk in the room, I tell people do this and I coerce them and they do it, right? Or you can demand conformity, right? You said, okay, well, I want everybody to basically obey the company law, whatever. I don't care. Or you could be the type of leader that says, okay, I realize people have different talents, so I'm going to figure out how I work to basically build people up. Or you can say, okay, all I want is people to collaborate, right? This part is really where you want to be. You want people to be the type of individual in your organization that knows how to collaborate and at the same time respects the fact that people are different and whatnot, right? This is where you create an environment where ethics is actually very big and whatnot. But let me actually, because we actually not, we're gonna run out of time, let me just quickly do this. In your environment, these are the things that you will notice happen. When you're trying to lead as a leader, there are all kinds of biases that happen. There are people that says, oh, okay, you know, if from Uganda, it's like, oh, no, those people are the Ugandans, you know, we are different people or whatnot. And then on the job, you behave like that. If you do not take care, the street culture will come into your organization because you have people bring in biases, you've had people bring in prejudices, and then you have people who basically bully others, right? You cannot have execution and be an ethical leader in the midst of this. You are the ones that has to deal with it as a leader, right? The people who have biases, when you catch them, guess what they do? They will say, oh, we don't mean it, right? We didn't mean it. Okay, I didn't mean to say the person was from the north, or I didn't mean to say Kikogus are not smart. I didn't mean to say that. When you catch them, that's what they say, right? The person who is prejudiced, guess what? They actually mean it, right? They actually don't like you. They're just prejudicial. And the person who's bullying, when you catch them, they also probably will apologize. But guess what? They're very mean people. That's why they bully, right? But you as a leader, these three things, I will add a fourth one that you should never make sure it happens around you, right? So how do you address the biased person, the prejudiced person, the bullying person who's basically going to be the same folks who actually create these ethical problems in your company, right? Number one, the I statement. It has to do that the person has to take responsibility. It is actually about me, right? The prejudice is about the it. What is it that you are somehow ascribing to this person? The mean person A mean person comes and says that, oh, I did this because of him doing this or whatever. No. He did this because he himself is the problem, right? And that has to be addressed. The addressing piece that I want to talk about actually has to do with this. It has to do with this part here. You as a leader, how does the leader address this in the organization? You as a leader, you make responding as an expectation. The worst thing is to have leaders in organization where something happens, they never say anything, nobody says anything, and the whole company is talking about, did you hear what happened to this person? Yeah, I'm surprised that nobody said anything. Even, there was even the boss didn't say anything. Guess what? You just created a whole new narrative and a rule if you do that. So the least you as a leader can do is you let it be known that as far as you are leading, for the environment to have ethics as a foundational strength, everybody knows that you demand expectation when it comes to responding to 4 key things. When it comes to biases, when it comes to prejudice, when it comes to bullying, when it comes to people breaking the rule. The worst thing is for somebody to break rule from work, skip work maybe 10 days in a row with no notification to HR, or even just sell company assets and then be caught, and then somehow it comes out and there is no consequence, right? The way you handle bias is this. You literally focus on how you disrupt that biases, right? Meaning that you literally are going to demand values, right? When it comes to prejudices, people are bringing their own values from the street. So there you create space for conversations. You become the leader who always are having conversations about prejudices, right? And making sure you're finding the space to talk about, sexism, all kinds of stuff that basically would create an environment where ethics will not survive. And then when it comes to bullying and rule breaking, consequences. You have to expect consequences. You have to make it such that people actually expect that there are serious consequences as far as you as a leader is around, right? So that is what, because of time, let me end with that and then basically open it up for discussion so we can really talk through or have questions answered, right? So let me turn it over to you, Doris and Juliet. I think I will. Okay,
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you so much, Juliet.
So sorry for taking too much time. I wanted to go 30 minutes, but it looks like I went quite far. So
that's fine. Thank you so much for the enlightening information. You've given us so much. At this point, I'd like us to open the floor for questions. I'm sure people have some questions or need some clarification. And I'm just going to ask, if you have a specific question, if you could use the hands up option. Any questions?
folks, do not be afraid to speak up. That is what leaders do.